The rain hit the windshield in steady sheets, blurring the streetlights and turning the world into shades of gray. Officer James Morgan had seen 100 rainy nights like this, patrolling the quiet back roads of Brookhaven. But something about this one felt different. Maybe it was the silence in his cruiser, the absence of the deep, steady breathing that used to come from the passenger seat. That space had belonged to Rex, his K-9 partner, his best friend, until last winter's call went wrong and everything changed. Now, it was just James, the rain, and the ghost of a bark that still echoed in his memory. He turned onto Maplewood Avenue, ready to call a night, when a blur darted across the road. James slammed the brakes, so hard his heart felt like it jumped into his throat. The cruiser skidded slightly on the wet pavement and stopped inches from what looked like a small, soaked animal. He threw open the door and ran into the rain. It was a puppy, shivering, soaked to the bone, and limping with one paw held awkwardly above the ground. The little dog tried to back away, but collapsed into a puddle. The headlights of an approaching car illuminated the scene, and instinct kicked in. James scooped up the puppy just before the car splashed past, horn blaring. He wrapped the trembling bundle in his jacket and whispered, "You're okay now, buddy. I got you." The nearest emergency vet was 20 minutes away, and the whole drive, James kept glancing down at the pup in the passenger seat. Tiny chest rising and falling. One eye closed, a cut above the brow. Blood on the paw, but no more crying. No more struggle. Just a fragile, desperate trust forming in that silence. At the clinic, the vet, Dr. Caldwell, worked quickly. Small cut, dehydration, bruising on the leg. She said, "No chip, no collar." Someone dumped him, or he got away. James sat beside the recovery crate, watching the little thing sleep. He hadn't planned on this. Hadn't expected the weight of another heartbeat in his life so soon after losing Rex. But there it was. "He's lucky," the vet said when she returned. "If you hadn't been there..." James nodded slowly. "Yeah, lucky." The name stuck. The first night at home was chaotic. Lucky didn't want to be alone, didn't want to be still. He whimpered when James stepped out of the room, cried when the lights went off, and barked at the television as if daring the characters to step out. But when James lay down on the couch, the puppy climbed right onto his chest and fell asleep like it had always been his place. And maybe in some way it had. In the days that followed, James discovered that Lucky had energy like a spark plug and the curiosity of a toddler. Socks went missing. The remote got chewed. A houseplant was reduced to green confetti. But with every chewed slipper and every tumble across the hardwood floors, James laughed more than he had in months. The shadows Rex had left were still there, but Lucky didn't feel them. He simply sat beside them, tail wagging, as if to say it was okay to feel them and still move forward. Lucky healed quickly, and with that healing came mischief and joy. James began bringing him to the station once in a while. At first, just short visits, introductions, a few tail wags, a couple of belly rubs from dispatch. But soon, Lucky became part of the rhythm. Officers brought treats. The chief pretended to grumble, but always slipped him bits of beef jerky. Even the old sergeant, who'd once said dogs didn't belong anywhere near the squad room, started keeping a tennis ball in his desk drawer. James noticed something else, too. Lucky had a gift, not for sniffing out contraband or chasing suspects, but for people. When a teenager arrested for vandalism sat in the waiting room with silent defiance, it was Lucky who nudged his hand until the boy scratched his head. When a woman came in sobbing about her missing son, it was Lucky who rested his head on her lap and sat quietly until the panic softened. It gave James an idea. The department had always talked about improving community outreach. James proposed a new program, Paws for Patrol, where officers would bring dogs into schools and neighborhood events to talk about kindness, courage, and responsibility. The chief approved it with a grunt and a wave of his pen. And just like that, Lucky became more than a station mascot. He became a symbol. At the first school visit, James watched Lucky move from child to child, tail wagging, eyes bright. One boy with autism, who hadn't spoken a whole semester, whispered dog and reached out. Another girl in foster care sat with Lucky in her lap the whole afternoon, not letting go. The teachers cried. James almost did too. It was the kind of healing you couldn't teach. Lucky just knew. Months passed. Lucky grew into his paws, but not by much. He'd never be big or intimidating, but that wasn't his role. He was joy bottled up in fur, purpose on 4 legs. Then, one spring afternoon, the call came in. Burglary in progress. Abandoned warehouse. James was closest and responded alone, with Lucky curled up in the back seat. "Stay put," he said when they arrived, patting the dog's head. "This one's not for you." The building was dark and musty, the air thick with dust. James moved cautiously, flashlights sweeping across crates and broken pallets. A noise in the back, a crash, a shuffle. He drew his weapon and called out, "Police! Come out now!" Silence. Then movement. Too fast to react. A man lunged from behind a stack of crates, slamming James to the ground. The flashlight skittered away. They struggled. James trying to twist free, the man fighting with wild desperation. A punch landed hard on James's ribs, his arm pinned. He heard it before he saw it. A bark, sharp and furious, echoing off the warehouse walls. Lucky, a blur of brown and white, for launched itself at the attacker's leg. Teeth sank in, not deep but enough. The man shouted, faltered, and that split second was all James needed. He rolled free, got the cuffs on. Breathing hard, heart pounding, he looked at his sidekick. "You weren't supposed to follow me," he said, laughing through the pain. Lucky licked his face. Back at the station, the story spread like wildfire. "Hero dog saves officer." Read the next day's paper. The mayor invited them both to City Hall. Kids sent drawings. Lucky in a cape, Lucky in sunglasses. Lucky standing on top of a cartoon police car with a grin on his face. The department held a small ceremony. James gave Lucky a bad-shaped tag for his collar, engraved with a date and one word, partner. Life after that settled into something like perfection. Every morning, Lucky trotted alongside James for coffee. Every afternoon, they walked the perimeter of the station like they owned it. Every weekend, they went to the park, Lucky chasing squirrels with no hope of catching them, James pretending not to cheer him on. Years passed. Lucky's muzzle turned gray. His energy dipped. He no longer raced to the door when the leash came out, but he still insisted on riding in the cruiser, even if he just dozed in the back seat. On the anniversary of the warehouse rescue, the town held a lucky day. Kids dressed up like police dogs. The bakery made dog-friendly cupcakes. James stood on stage and told their story again. He never got tired of telling it. And then, one morning, the sun barely up, James reached for the leash and turned toward the old familiar lump under the blanket. "Come on, pal. Time to get moving." No movement. Lucky. He pulled the blanket back. The old dog lay still, eyes closed, breath gone. Peaceful, like he just drifted off, tired from a life well lived. James sat beside him for a long time. The house was too quiet after that. The cruiser, too. The station echoed in strange ways. James kept working, but the smiles came slower. The laughter faded around the edges. At Lucky's memorial, the whole town showed up. Children left notes and flowers. Officers took turns sharing stories. The mayor read a proclamation naming Lucky an honorary citizen. And James, standing before the crowd, held up the badge tag. He was never trained, never wore a uniform, but he did what the best of us do. He showed up. He gave comfort. He gave everything he had. He paused, looked up at the sky, and said, "Thank you, partner." A year passed. Then one day, a letter arrived, crayon on line paper, from a girl at the local shelter. It said, "There's a puppy here who looks like your dog. I think he's waiting for you." James didn't hesitate. Not this time. Somewhere, paws thumped against the kennel floor, eager for a second chance. And somewhere in that quiet place inside his chest, James felt the warmth return, like a heartbeat finding its rhythm again. Thank you so much for watching. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs a smile, and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to tap the bell icon so you never miss a new story that speaks to the soul. This is Soulful Stories, where every story finds its way to the heart. Until next time, stay kind, stay connected, and keep believing in the goodness around you.